Hello and welcome everyone to this ECB focus session. Today's topic is the Eurosystem's work on wholesale central bank money. Today we have a specific focus on the Appia Roadmap, which was published yesterday on the ECB website. My name is Aileen and I'm here with a great team of ECB colleagues. We're going to try to support you today during today's session, both on the backstage and with speakers on the front stage. It's a really nice afternoon across Europe, I think. So we're really happy to have so many people registered with us today. Before we get started, we just want to run you through a few practical information. First of all, the event will be live streamed. So some of you will be joining us in the Teams webinar, and others will be joining us in the live stream. Even if you're joining in the webinar, I would advise that you throughout this afternoon. The way to do that, it's twofold. You can either send us an email to the email address displayed on the screen now. So it's slightly complicated, so you may want to take a photo of that so you have it for later in case it comes in handy. Another way, which is very easy, is again to scan the QR code on the screen now. That will take you to forms, and here you can just submit any questions you have to the different sessions throughout the afternoon. So that works well. In addition, you may raise your hand, but as I said before, everyone is automatic muted, so that is not a function that I would advise you to do. But as always, send your questions. We will be getting a lot of questions. I know this from the past, so bear with us if we don't manage everything. And with that in mind, we are ready to move on. But before we get into the actual agenda of today, I just want to, you can see it here, it's intense. So there's going to be a lot of good information for you there. But before we deep dive into that, I just want to briefly draw your attention to the platforms where you can follow us. This is the best way to stay up to date about both the Appia Roadmap, but also anything else that is done at the ECB Market Infrastructure and Payments Department. So we have different ways. You can follow us on Twitter. You can also join our LinkedIn group where we post any news that is happening. Plus, you can subscribe to the email newsletter, again, with a QR code on the screen here. A quick way to join that one. So without any further waiting, we want to jump straight into the program. And I'm really happy to have our Director General of Market Infrastructure and Payments with us today. So without further ado, I just want to welcome Thomas and give the floor to you. So Thomas, welcome.
Thank you, Eileen. Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to this focus session. So it's my pleasure to introduce the program for this afternoon. And if we go to the next slide, please, let me give you a bit of an overview. So last year, in 2025, the Governing Council of the ECB approved an ambitious program on tokenized wholesale central bank money, comprising of two projects, Project Pontes and Project Appia. And this followed from the successful exploratory work that we had across the Eurosystem conducted in 2024, and this was the largest initiative of its kind in the world. Now, in 2026, we're entering delivery mode, and we already have the first two major milestones. So in September, we will go live with the initial launch of the Pontes service. Today, however, is about Appia. And the first milestone of this part of the program is the Appia Roadmap, which we published yesterday. So what I'd like to do in my brief introduction is to take a step back and briefly explain what the Eurosystem's program on DLT aims to achieve and what it is. The starting point is the transformational potential of tokenization as a technology. Tokenization allows making the processing of financial transactions more simple and therefore more efficient. But besides efficiency, it allows innovative use cases to emerge by leveraging smart contracts. And it also helps to reduce risks, and in particular, settlement risk through atomic settlement. Now, the market recognizes the transformative potential of this technology and is investing in it. But there's an important factor that is, in our view, limiting the ability of this market to scale and therefore really realize the potential this has for Europe. And this limiting factor is the lack of a digitally native, safe, trusted, and scalable settlement asset. And this is a clear takeaway that we took from the market feedback during our 2024 exploratory work. Now, there's also another limitation, which is that market DLT networks are for the moment operating largely in siloed mode. They are not interconnected or interoperable. And again, this is something that we saw during the trials and experiments back in 2024. What this does is it leads to a fragmented landscape with inefficiencies, very much like what we see in the traditional world. If we go to the next slide, please. Our Eurosystem program on DLT aims to address both these limitations within two distinct time horizons. In the more immediate time frame, Pontes will make available tokenized central bank money, which will be the safe settlement asset that the European DLT market needs. And it will do so soon, as I said before, already in September, in the third quarter of this year. Pontes will make it possible for a market participant buying a tokenized asset on a market DLT to pay for it using tokenized central bank money. The second initiative, and today's focus, is Appia. And this is about working together with the market to design an ecosystem where wholesale central bank money can be seamlessly accessed and used alongside securities, tokenized deposits, and stablecoins. And this will allow an integrated, competitive, and innovative ecosystem to flourish. If we go to the next slide, please. Now, the Eurosystem will provide a relatively small but important, vital part of this ecosystem. The rest will be built by the market. So this is really a public-private partnership. And for all partners to be working in the same direction, it is important, it's fundamental that we provide early, transparent, and clear communication. And this is what today is about and what the roadmap is precisely about. So the roadmap outlines the Eurosystem's objectives. It explains the scenarios and options that we will be considering. And it also explains the approach that we will take to evaluate these options and scenarios. It also identifies the key questions that will be analyzed and sets a timeline. Now, importantly, the roadmap is also an invitation to the market and other stakeholders to work with us on this initiative. And Dimitri will explain later on how you can get involved, provide feedback, and contribute. And with that, let me stop here and turn back to you, Aileen.
Thank you, Thomas. Great to have you on board. So we are going to, put you on hold for a little bit and then take questions later on, because we want to already now go straight into the actual overview of the roadmap, because now Thomas gave the first highlights on this. So for the overview of the roadmap, I want to bring in Holger, who is the head of division at the ECB and here in heavily involved in this project. So Holger, over to you. We need to unmute first.
Yes, thank you. So it's my pleasure actually to start presenting the roadmap. And the first point that I would like to go into is why we do this. And you see on the next slide that I will use actually a complex chart in order to explain simply, in simple terms, why tokenization can deliver efficiency and innovation. So what you see here is actually a stylized end-to-end value chain where you see in the first row, you see actually that buyer A trades in order to purchase a security from seller B. And in the green column to the left, so you see actually the various steps and functions that are needed in order to actually have this value chain complete. So there's the trade execution, there's the clearing, there's the settlement, and there's the asset servicing. And you also see that there are many parties there and intermediaries involved, be it the brokers, an exchange, CCP, CSD, and also the respective of custodians of buyer and seller. One feature then in the current system is that the intermediaries keep their own record of their activities. Of course, it's good practice to keep track of what you've done and also on the state of affairs. In this case, the state of the security and who owns it, etc. While it actually, this system, as it is here with various parties having the records, this leads actually to reconciliation needs time and efforts until all of these states are actually agreed by all parties. So this does slow down automation over the life cycle of a transaction or an asset. How can DLT help? And that is if we flip forward. Please, I mean, you don't see much of a change. What you visually see here is a subtle change. It's a small box around this ecosystem, which is basically the promise of DLT, because that is actually this should symbolize that there is actually a common network, a single network, which serves as a shared utility on which all of these assets and services actually are offered. And that means that because all parties can decentrally access the necessary information and everybody sees the same information at once, this has a strong advantage. The advantages are listed then on the next version of this same slide. On the next slide, please. Because that allows then this swiftness, because there is not the need for reconciliation. It does allow not only 24/7 work, but also seamless automated transactions. It does allow for smart contracts and also allowing the customizable automatic triggering of transactions and of actions. Then atomic settlement, i.e. the synchronous exchange of assets. And as I mentioned already, and how it is often referred to as the so-called single source of truth, actually because everybody has that the very same information. And if you go to the next slide, please. This is a bit on the conceptual framework behind. So, and for the purpose of this presentation, we focus here on two layers. And you see on top in blue, the asset and the services. So actually, you think of so the asset and service layers can accommodate many, a multiplicity, many settlement and investment assets and related services, each with its own governance. Even if on a DLT network, they would reside on what is then below on the network infrastructure. So this network layer is responsible for the technical processing of the transactions and The objective here is to ensure the integrity of the ledger. But again, this makes it much easier. Such a utility makes it much easier for somebody to enter the market, offer services without always bringing all of the fundamental technical network infrastructure behind. Next slide, please. So after this part on the why, here are the objectives that we have actually in the DLT context. So the first one is that the Eurosystem, the Eurosystem objectives is that to ensure that monetary policy and financial stability are effective by maintaining central bank money as the anchor of a two-tier system. So we would like to ensure that for wholesale transactions, central bank money is being used. It is not to replace the two-tier monetary system as we have it. It rather ensures that actually a two-tier monetary system would also work when the market, and will work, when the market then moves to new technology. Secondly, we want to foster a more integrated, competitive, and innovative payments and securities ecosystem through efficient infrastructures for financial markets. So we do have the mandate in our statute and the treaty to ensure that clearing and payment systems are sound and efficient. We also want to support the integration of European financial markets, also as this facilitates the smooth and even transmission of the ECB's monetary policy. This also reduces costs and fosters competition and innovation, which will in turn contribute to the EU's Savings and Investment Union initiative and more integrated European financial markets for digital assets. Third, we would like to support strategic autonomy and increase resilience in the Euro system. So we are seeking to safeguard then this strategic independence in financial markets, ensuring that European tokenized financial markets are not critically dependent on foreign infrastructures, laws, or technologies in times of stress, or in the event of a geopolitical fragmentation. So central bank money, so on-chain, also supports safe developments of regulated private settlement assets, like, then of regulated private settlement assets like commercial bank money and stablecoins. Ensuring the relevance of the euro as an international currency is then the fourth objective here. So this objective is to enable easier access to European financial services and cross-border payments. This also then increases the euro's attractiveness as settlement asset globally. Next slide, please. We are complementing then these high-level objectives with high-level principles, and they help guide the progress on Appia towards identifying a future-ready solution. They should ensure that the approaches, designs, and ideas which are being analyzed or tested within Appia remain aligned with the objectives I mentioned, without prescribing or prejudging future-specific legal, technical, or operational implementations. So on the monetary policy, the central bank money as the anchor, I've already mentioned that. What I would only like to add is that, of course, means that when we design tokenized central bank money, this should be in a way that is future-proof and ensure that also monetary policy implementation can be carried out effectively through this system. Secondly, market access and integration. So the ecosystem should enable its stakeholders to reach all EU assets and services, eliminating technical or commercial barriers, and allow assets and cash to function as closely as possible to a single pool, also to minimize liquidity and asset fragmentation. On innovation, well, this would be for those here in this audience, kind of what you would expect. So leveraging on the promises of DLT, so programmability, composability, 24/7, 365 availability, and of course also adapting to new technological solutions should they arise and avoiding a vendor lock-in. the aspects on competition, I've already mentioned. For efficiency, the end-to-end processing should be real-time and enable atomicity, while allowing for flexibility for non-instantaneous execution based on market practices, for example, for liquidity-saving measures. Sustainability is also a principle. Robustness would also be then for the, also to make sure that actually the system would be robust and resilient and reliable, be it for example, also for cyber attacks, including in the quantum proof sense. Legal certainty and also ensuring that the Appia ecosystem should comply with all relevant legal and regulatory frameworks and also other requirements such as privacy is also part of the principles. The governance and control, so the ecosystem should comply with Eurosystem's policy and also operate under transparent governance, with no critical dependence on foreign infrastructure or laws, also to allow European authorities to be effective in their capacity to supervise and intervene in public policy objectives. And the scalability point, I think, is also self-explanatory, so that I do not know to go deeper into this. Thank you.
Thank you, Holger. That was nice. So we've gone through a lot of slides here. Everyone just scanning again the QR code on the screen if you will have any questions. While you all do this, and we give Holger a little break so he can grab a glass of water and breathe. We're just going to go through a few places because we already had a number of things about where documents are found and the Appia Roadmap itself. So we're just going to show you a few things. So if we can move to first here, just again, how you stay informed is, again, as I said before, follow us either on the newsletter or in the market contact group. Here we are market infrastructure and payments in the LinkedIn. And if you join that group, you will really get all the latest that's happening in this space. But if you're looking for information, the ECB website is fantastic. We have a lot of information, but there is a lot. So it can also be difficult to find everything. So I'm just going to show you a little bit how to get there so it can help people out. At the top line, you need to navigate to payments and financial stability. Once you are there, you will be able to go to tokenization and DLT. And under this tab, you will find Appia. And here is the place to go if you want to find any information, both on this initiative. You can go here. And as we see on the next slide, there's another place that might spark your interest, which is the same top layer, payments, financial stability. And then you move to payments, news, and events. And this is a good this is a very good place to to view occasionally, especially if you're not in one of our social media groups, because here is where we publish any news or where you can find information about events. So for instance, today's event and all the material that will be posted after the event, like I mentioned before, we will upload all slides and the full recording will come to this page. So that's a good one to mark as a favorite if you want to make sure that you don't miss anything. So very good. So now let me just double check questions quickly, and for everyone else, you can keep using the QR code to submit more questions. But maybe we could quickly bring in, we can bring back Thomas, because I think we would have a question for you, Thomas. Let me see. We have a question. Yes, about accessibility.
Yes, I guess the question is primarily about collateral eligibility of tokenized securities. We announced at the end of January that we will be accepting marketable assets that are issued by CSDs using DLT. And we will be accepting them as eligible collateral. This is not eligibility to be part of any of the in any of the initiatives that we have been discussing so far today, Pontes in particular, but also Appia. It is about eligibility for our standard monetary policy operations. So there was an announcement at the end of January making it clear that if an asset has been issued by a CSD but using DLT, it will be eligible as of the 30th of March this year. That should not be understood as meaning that all other DLT assets, namely those that are not issued by CSDs and therefore hosted on eligible security settlement systems, that those will never be eligible. It means that at this moment in time, we are able to accept those. But the announcement at the end of January also made a clear statement about the direction of travel, which is that we are doing further work to explore ways to expand the eligibility of assets settled entirely on DLT networks. So this is work that is undergoing. I would say it's a little bit parallel work to Pontes and Appia, but it is certainly synergetic to Appia because, of course, part of making this ecosystem ready to scale up also means eligibility for monetary policy operations. So the direction of travel is clear, is to be more inclusive. The announcement that was made so far clarifies what we are able to accept in the short term, namely as of 30th of March this year. Thanks, Eileen. I don't know whether there is anything.
Super.
Else.
Yes, I will give you a breathing room, Thomas, 30 seconds for you, and then I bring in Holger. We have a few questions for Holger as well. You're with me.
Yes.
There you are. Lovely. Great to see you. So we have a few questions for you as well. Let's see. There's a lot of questions coming in here, Holger. So maybe you want to speak briefly about the tokenization, central bank money, interoperability, and with tokenized deposits issued by banks. So maybe you want to speak a little bit about that.
Yes. So that actually is, I mean, that's a good question. I would then recall, I mean, I mentioned before that we want to actually make it possible that the two-tier monetary system actually will work then also in the DLT environment. So from that point of view, we in this initiative will want to be interconnected with central bank money. Now, how that will exactly actually take shape, that is something which actually we will review, and that's part of the process to find out of how to do that. We mentioned, as mentioned before, there is of course the advantage of DLT if all assets and settlement assets are on the same ledger, but that is one solution, and it's important to play out the advantages of DLT, but how that precisely plays out in the future, that we have to see, and actually more information on also possibilities that we are looking at will come actually in the next section of the roadmap. So I would not go into answering these points now. I also saw that there was a question. There was a question actually on to whom we address our public consultation. I think that will be part of later. I would also pause this because but what I can already say is we are not targeting a specific audience because this on wholesale financial markets is relevant for all. So we will listen to all of the voices.
All right, Holger. We're going through you guys are very busy out there, so bear with us a second. I'll give Holger 30 seconds breathing time, and then I want to bring in Thomas again. So there you are, Thomas. Great to have you on. We have a little bit a question for you on relationships, the wholesale versus the retail. Maybe you want to speak about these projects here. Digital Euro versus this one.
You. Yeah, thank you, Aline. So in a way, what we are talking about today is clearly and squarely on wholesale. So that means it is about financial market participants and in particular are the entities that have access to our traditional settlement systems. So it's squarely about wholesale. But if you take a further step back, this set of initiatives, Pontes and Appia, you could frame them as part of an overall strategy to make central bank money fit for the digital age. And for the wholesale, we have this single program with Pontes and Appia, and for the retail, meaning for individual citizens and businesses, we are working on the digital euro, subject to approval of the legislation that would allow the digital euro to be issued. So they are part of the same strategic aim to make central bank money fit for the digital age, but they are very distinct as projects, as technologies, as the way they work, and the markets they are addressing. Again, digital euro is for retail use. It is for individuals. It is also for merchants who would be accepting in the future digital euro. What we are talking about here is in the wholesale financial markets. It's providing a settlement asset so that essentially banks can settle between themselves in central bank money in tokenized form. Thanks.
Super. Thank you. Thank you, Thomas. I think that clarified a few questions in there.
Then I would also maybe take a question that I saw on the blueprint that will be delivered, and also what will be delivered in the meantime. So again, the next section will explain more how we do things, and that is actually where we will actually have work to identify this, as in the next section. There were also there, but there's one point, and that will be there will be more tangible results, for example, on standardization, and there are quite some questions on technical questions on which we will actually also provide more details. So that is something which we will deliver really in the meantime. So it's not just a blueprint. There will be quite some work with the private sector going forward.
Thank you, Holger. And then we have a few questions. Like always, you guys are always very keen on you ask questions that we're actually going to answer in the next presentations. So I think what we will do now is to hold the questions, and I will allow then the next presenters to come on. And because some of the questions that you're asking, they're actually going to answer. So it's great to bring in the next topic, which is more on the insight on the general approach of Appia, and how to be involved in this endeavor. So for this, I'm really happy to have first Paul with me. So I want to bring Paul in. There you are. Great to hear you as well and see you. So Paul, over to you.
Thanks, Ellen, and good afternoon, everyone. So yes, I see lots of enthusiasm and questions asking how you can be involved. So hopefully I can shed a bit of light on what we have in mind in this regard. If we go to the next slide, what you will see is just to pick up on what Holger mentioned in the first part, and we explained our objectives and the principles we've identified to achieve this vision of an integrated ecosystem. I hope it is clear by now that this requires taking quite a broad perspective, meaning an ecosystem perspective or a value chain perspective, And as Thomas said, it's not just about how we provide central bank money, but to look at how central bank money, private settlement assets, securities, but also all the underlying services that are built on top of these assets and the lifecycle management of these assets can be implemented with the technology in a much more integrated way than is currently the case. And to do that across the value chain, so collaboration with all the relevant stakeholders will be key. I also saw a lot of questions about exactly the specs or how we will do that. The key point for us is that precisely we want to explore in Appia how to operationalize this vision. And this requires, from our perspective, going through some scenarios and some key questions. What you have on the slides are examples of the types of questions that we will want to explore with all the relevant stakeholders. Some of these questions will relate to understanding the market developments and the landscape. What could the future landscape look like? Depending, for instance, on the type of networks, is it a single network or multiple networks that are being used and being built to deploy services in wholesale markets? We'd also need to explore the capabilities of the technology itself. For instance, whether from a technical perspective, different networks could be interconnected, whether assets could move relatively seamlessly across different networks and be used in such a possible landscape. So this will crucially depend on the capabilities of the technology itself. And I would say another key category of question that we will need to explore is specifically from a central bank perspective, understand how we can adapt our existing operations, our existing services to this new future landscape and to this technology. So this is where we will want to explore, for instance, how we could retain control over central bank money, or over collateral, or over our services, if this were provided in future DLT infrastructures, for instance, shared infrastructures that could be not solely operated by the Euro system. And to also some of the questions that we've received, this is where also, for instance, we will want to explore operations like collateral mobilization and management of native DLT assets. If we go to the next slide, maybe I can shed a bit of light specifically on what we will do to address and answer these questions. I think on the market development, it is clear that the first activity we will do is stakeholder engagement. We've actually started yesterday because as Ellen mentioned, when we published our roadmap yesterday, we've also opened a consultation where you can provide your input, your ideas to progress this initiative. This consultation is open to a broad range of stakeholders, as Holger explained. We are looking for feedback from financial institutions, academics, technology providers. We're not limiting ourselves ex ante, precisely because we need to take this broad ecosystem perspective. We will also explore specifically the technology and the emerging standards that we are seeing, also to identify what additional standards may be necessary. Here we will want to carefully look at whether those emerging standards are meeting our objectives and principles, what Holger has identified, but also whether they address the need for European strategic autonomy. My colleague Gerge will come in just a few minutes to provide a bit more information specifically on that point. Another type of activities we'll want to do will be very practical and concrete. So we will want to explore ourselves operationally and technically how we could use the technologies for our own operations, running targeted experimentations. So this could, for instance, explore, as I mentioned, the mobilization of native DLT assets for collateral. This could also explore how we could provide tokenized central bank money liquidity beyond what we have currently planned with Pontes. And one of the types of questions we will ask ourselves, and I believe also was raised in the questions, will specifically be to understand how such operations could take place, for instance, in the context of a shared network or shared DLT infrastructure, and understanding how governance, what governance for such networks could look like. The idea for this initiative will be that we will progress these questions iteratively, and that this will guide our own gradual, continuous enhancements of Pontes to ensure that Pontes is in line with Appia and this vision of an integrated ecosystem. Of course, before we have the results and the answers to those questions, it's a bit difficult to provide very specific illustrations of what this looks like. But just to give you some ideas, this could take the shape of, for instance, further enhancement of functionalities to Pontes, or upgrading the standards that we apply, or, for instance, considering even possibly new types of infrastructures. And so all of this input from Appia will feed into our Pontes initiative to progress towards implementation. If we go to the next slide, I just want to reiterate something that has been mentioned by the previous speakers already, that you can see that this is quite a wide and ambitious scope for Appia. So this means that we will require effective collaboration with a wide range of stakeholders, not limited to market stakeholders, also, for instance, in academia or also in the public sector. To facilitate this market engagement and this collaboration, what we've done is we've grouped all of the different topics and questions we want to address into these building blocks that you see here on the screen. And the idea is that we will progress these building blocks in parallel, with a caveat maybe for this sixth building block that you see on the implementation strategy, where we expect, of course, this one to be much more detailed, closer to the Appia blueprint in 2028. But the first blueprint will focus on interoperability and standards. The second one will specifically look at monetary policy implementation in a new ecosystem, including, for instance, new mobilization channels for collateral. A third one will center on the type of DLT infrastructure or infrastructures that could be suitable to provide tokenized central bank money on. And we will also have a dedicated block covering what we call the international dimension, looking here at how we would connect a European ecosystem to the rest of the world and establish cross-border links beyond Europe. We will also look at the new emerging ecosystem in a fifth building block to look, for instance, of how such an ecosystem could be resilient, how risk management could be ensured in a new ecosystem, and also to consider the types of legal or regulatory implications that could be foreseen down the line. The final one on the implementation strategy. This will detail specifically how we could deliver on this vision, the Eurosystem, but also all the relevant stakeholders. And we will also detail here the impact on the existing infrastructure landscape. So just to reiterate that the immediate next steps to gather your inputs is to look at the public consultation we've issued, and we look forward to your input and feedback. With that, Ellen, I would hand it over back to you.
Thank you, Paul. Great. So we are having questions coming in for you, but I'm going to give you a break and I'm going to bring in Gege because he's going to continue with some of the questions that you guys are already asking. So let's have Gege on board. There you are. Welcome.
Yeah.
There. Perfect.
Yes.
Over to you.
Thank you, Aline. Good afternoon, everyone. Indeed, just to continue where Paul stopped. As he mentioned, one of the key building blocks on Appia is interoperability and standards. Now, why this is a key topic is that, I mean, also if you look at this slide, this is already a challenge in the legacy ecosystem, but it's even more a challenge in the emerging DLT-based ecosystem, because what you see in the market, and this is what we experienced also in our 2024 explorative work, but also in the evolution of the landscape since, is that these silos are popping up, these networks are popping up as silos without any interoperability between them, which means that practically an asset issued in one of these networks is not available to the participants of the other network, or that, in other words, if an issuer wants to reach investors that participate in other networks, it's not possible unless the issuer issues the asset on the very same network that the investors are in. So this clearly means that if the situation remains, that implies that there's competition for the market rather than competition in the market, which is a type of competition which is seldom won, which also implies that then this will prevent the situation, will prevent this whole ecosystem from scaling up and from maturing to a deep and useful ecosystem for financial markets. So what is the answer to this? And the answer to this, if we move to the next slide, is standardization. So one of the primary ways to achieve and ensure interoperability between different DLT networks is via standards, because then the standards, if the standards are followed by all networks, then that can ensure that they can speak to each other and that the assets can move between the networks, and that there's no need for each investor and each issuer to join every single network to meet. Now, this is a complex area, of course. there's a lot of layers of standardization. So before this discussion starts in earnest, one needs to structure it and one needs to layer it. And of course, this discussion has already started in the industry. But the way to facilitate these discussions, and that's one of the key objectives again of the Appia initiative, is first to understand which layers, which domains the standardization work needs to happen. And one of the segmentation that we so far have been seen by market initiatives, which seem to converge on this, is the one that you see on the slide, that these are the areas where standardization needs to progress. The first one is data and semantics. Obviously, there needs to be a common data language that these stakeholders speak in order to be able to interoperate. Then also there's the token and asset representation layer where there needs to be standards if we want to ensure that the tokens can be handled in different networks. Then transactions layer is also important, so the transactions seamlessly can be processed and settled across networks. Finally, there needs to be standards on network governance and control. Otherwise, one cannot achieve interoperability, obviously. And then finally, and also very importantly, the legal environment needs to be harmonized as well, so that there's no legal uncertainties or legal frictions in the underlying environment which govern DLT networks and activity on DLT platforms. I would stop there, but I saw that there were some questions already in this domain, so I can confirm that we will cover not only the technical layer, but we will cover also the semantics and the data in this, and we will engage, as Paul also mentioned, we will engage a very broad set of stakeholders in this work, in our role as a catalyst and in our role as a convener.
Excellent, thank you, Gerge. So I'll just let you have 30 seconds to look at all these questions coming in. You guys are very active as always. Again, if you have questions, we should almost not show this slide, right? For now, you're too active. But anyway, we are. But there was one thing I want to show you, because Paul was referring to the consultation, and maybe again, it would be good for you guys to just find all the latest stuff we have just published. So the Appia Roadmap that Thomas mentioned was published yesterday. It's on the website, and you can find it under payments and financial stability news publications. There it is, and the weekend is coming up, so it's a good time to read that over the next few days. There's something to read, so that's one for everyone to save. In addition, there was also the press release, which you can find, and that also has a link both to the report, but it also has a link to the public consultation that was just mentioned. And if we move to the next page, that's a little bit difficult to find, but if you go via the press release, you will find it, or you can go again via payments, financial stability, news publications, and there we have a tab for public consultations. On this page, you will find all the material that you will be needing to read before you respond. And then there is specific an online survey platform that you can click and respond via. So that's the way to participate. And the deadline is 22nd of April. So that's important for everyone to write that somewhere, so you make sure that we hear from you by that deadline. And with that, I think we can bring back a few of the colleagues here. Paul, maybe do you want to come back and address a few questions on just to clarify some of the things? I think you went through most of it, but do you want to reiterate some of the points maybe to make sure everyone is fully on board?
Yes, thanks, Ellen. Indeed, I think it's worth reiterating how people can be involved, because I think that's quite a common thread from the questions. And again, it's really great to see all this enthusiasm. So again, the immediate step will be for you to have a look at this public consultation that Ellen just showed, and we would welcome your feedback. I can repeat that we are looking for feedback from a broad range of stakeholders, not limited to specifically to financial institutions, also, for instance, to academia or technological vendors or other institutions. We are not specifically targeting a particular audience. We will also be establishing, as we had done in the previous exploratory work, as is also the case with Pontes, a market engagement strategy through market groups. We will do so also and review the composition of our existing groups, also based on the replies to the consultation. So again, I would really advise you to have a look at the consultation if you want to be involved. And I think, Ellen, there were quite a few questions on the scope that I can also maybe address. So there were some questions, I think, about whether Appia has made some architectural choices. I saw also some questions about whether only native assets or tokenized assets would be covered. So maybe I can take those in one go. On the architectures and more generally the scope of Appia that we've described, we have identified on our side open questions before we can, let's say, propose a specific blueprint. This is why we are conducting this stakeholder engagement, this research, but also these targeted experimentations now to answer some of these open questions. And this will help us identify also with the market what is the specific solution that we will detail in the blueprint. So that is specifically why we set up these activities. That being said, as I also mentioned in one of the slides, we are really looking. We have two projects, Pontes and Appia, and these will iteratively reinforce each other. And whatever we can identify from the side of Appia that is, let's say, ready for implementation, we will do so through Pontes. So we are really looking into an iterative and flexible approach to move ahead. Provided we can answer our key research questions before doing so. And on the scope of the assets, so again, we're really looking at a broad ecosystem perspective, trying to understand how an efficient value chain could be operated on DLT. So this not only requires looking at specific types of assets, but also the broad range of services that would be provided in wholesale sphere. So we're not limiting ourselves either, let's say, to specific native DLT assets or to real-world tokenized assets. We want to have this broad ecosystem and value chain perspective. I think with that, Ellen, back to you.
Super. Thank you, Paul. So I'll give you a 30-second break, and then I'm going to bring back Gage. And while I bring back Gage, I'm just going to show at the same time the slide. So you guys have the slide for the public consultation. So that one is there too. And then Gage, I want to bring you back because there's a number of questions about standards. Can you enlighten us, please?
There is indeed. Thank you, Aline. And indeed, I think those questions seem to be going in the same direction on whether the standardization work will cover more than just technical standardization. And the answer is clearly yes. So Appia will focus on the whole value chain of standards. That's something that I try to show on my slide, including also the legal area. And of course, in the legal area, it's not the Eurosystem who will bring about any change directly, but we will under Appia facilitate the discussion on legal barriers and frictions to answer also that question. So that will also be in scope.
Excellent. Thank you, Gary. And then I'll let you take a break. And then I actually wanted to bring back Thomas, because Thomas, if you're still here with us, there's a few questions about Appia Pontes. And maybe you can talk a little bit about the two and what's what and what's on top of what. So please go ahead.
Yeah, thank you, Aline. Let me try. So Pontes is very much focused on the cash settlement leg. It is about providing a means and an infrastructure to enable settlement of DLT transactions in central bank money. So it really focuses on the settlement part. Now, Appia is a much broader initiative, but it's an exploratory, or if you like, an analytical initiative. It's about analyzing what are the types of architectures, market structures, combinations that are most likely to achieve some objectives that we have set out in the roadmap that the Eurosystem intends to achieve by engaging in this project. And they are the objectives that Holger talked about before. So it looks into how jointly with the market we can set up infrastructures that are, for instance, either interoperable or integrated and unified, so as to ensure that we have integration, that we have a competitive market, that we also have a setup that nurtures and allows innovation to happen. Now, in that Appia ecosystem, there will always be a need, and that's what we are there to ensure, for settlement in central bank money. And that component, that settlement component, will be provided by an infrastructure that will be the evolution of Pontes. So Pontes will be launched in the third quarter of this year, but depending on the outcomes of this analysis and the experiments and the proofs of concept that will be developed under Appia, those will deliver insights and user requirements and design specifications that we will put back into Pontes, and we will enhance and involve Pontes to provide the settlement services in central bank money that will be needed in the Appia vision, in the Appia ecosystem. And what that means is that although we will crystallize that ecosystem, that view on the ecosystem in 2028 with the blueprint, that doesn't mean that we will only start building something that is serving the Appia vision as regards central bank money settlement in 28. No, we will be enhancing Pontes in a staggered and gradual way so as to move it as close as possible to that Appia vision. So that's how I would articulate the two initiatives. Thank you.
Thank you, Thomas. Thank you, Thomas. That was very clear. Super. I think that that can cover a lot of the questions asked on specifically this topic. So thank you so much for this. I want to then bring back Paul again. If you are still here, you are, Paul, because there's a few questions about the operational framework. And so maybe you want to speak a bit about this for us.
Yeah, thanks, Helen. So indeed, there was a question about how the ECB operational framework might change given instantaneous settlement. So I think that's a very good question, and it's also a very good example of the types of questions that we have to solve in order to provide a clearer view through the Appia blueprint of what a solution for the ecosystem might look like. So that's one of the types of questions that we will want to explore indeed under, for instance, this Appia building block 2 on the monetary policy, not only the very operational procedures and how we could mobilize collateral, but also understand, for instance, what would be the liquidity needs of such an ecosystem and how that would be managed. And we have to combine our research and analysis and also learnings from targeted experimentation on these types of questions to get a clear view of how we could implement monetary policy more broadly in this ecosystem. So this is a very good example of the types of questions that we will want to investigate specifically in Appia. I think there was another question.
I can help you out here. There was a question about requirements and considerations for selecting the blockchain and how this assessment is done. Maybe you want to talk about that.
Yes. So that's also a very good question. I think if I take a bit of a step back, what you find in the roadmap under these Appia principles that Holger presented earlier, I think is a very clear and good representation of what we are looking for, what we want to achieve. So this will be the types of dimensions that we will want to look at. So I won't recall all the principles. I would use that as an opportunity to encourage you to read the roadmap if you're interested in the details. But this is the type of requirements that we will be looking at to understand. I think before saying what specific blockchain we can use, what type of infrastructure would we want to rely on, not only for our central bank operations, but also taking a more global ecosystem perspective. How we will do this assessment. So this is where we need to gather the input from the markets. We want to conduct the stakeholder engagement. We will also want to look at what type of feedback we get from our consultation again. So we invite you again to have a look at that consultation and provide your input. And we will also take what we learned from our own research and also from these targeted experimentations that I've mentioned. So we will gather all that input. And this will all feed into the designs and the decision we make from this perspective on the type of DLT infrastructures that we would see as part of this vision. Thank
you, Paul. I'll let you go a little, and then I want to bring back Gage. You're here with me still? Yes, you are. Because there's some questions about the interaction also with the DLT pilot regime. So maybe you want to talk about that, Gage.
Yes, thank you, Ellen. Indeed, and not only the DLT pilot regime, but also the Commission's market integration proposal package, which is, I think, indeed a very valid question. As Appia will operate in the context of the broader political discussion on integration, of course. So, and that the most important element of that discussion is the current proposal package by the Commission, which indeed, as the question highlights, includes a proposal to enhance the DLT pilot regime regulation to expand the licenses. And that of course, I mean, there's several aspects which will be relevant for the Appia work. One is again on standardization and interoperability, because indeed, as the question also points out, the DLT pilot regime extends and even allows the splitting of the roles between DLT service providers, which makes it even more important that these roles and these providers can talk to each other and can interoperate. So that certainly it will be focus of Appia, but then also relevant, obviously, for Pontes. Once this proposal becomes law, which is for the time being, it's only a proposal, of course, then the Eurosystem will see whether there's any need to potentially enhance or amend further the Pontes eligibility criteria on the basis of this. So yes, the answer to the question is yes, the proposal package is very much relevant for Appia, and Appia will consider the ongoing discussions in this.
Super. Thank you, Gage. It's always a bit of a marathon here, but I think we're doing good on your questions. So I think we can move on and bring back our last speaker. So just again, there was a quickly on the consultation page, but then I want to bring in Dimitri. Dimitri is Deputy Director General at Market Infrastructure and Payments, and I'm happy to have you with us today. And you're going to close up a little bit on the timeline and next steps. And before Dimitri does that, I just want briefly to draw your attention to the feedback. It's great for us to have your feedback. We do these sessions for you, right? So we want to get it right, and we want to do them as good as possible. So if you take those 2 minutes to fill in the feedback question afterwards, that would be great. So you can just scan the QR code now, so you have it at hand. And then I want to bring in Dimitri. So over to you.
Yes, good afternoon, Nadine. Do you hear me well? Or?
Hear you perfectly.
Yeah, okay. Well, before, I understand today I have one slide, but before, well, first of all, good afternoon to all. And before covering the slide that I'm supposed to cover with the timeline, I just wanted to recap a bit what we heard today. And I will even go a bit earlier than that, and to recall for those who were there that 2 weeks ago, we had a focus session, and on that occasion, we did a deep dive on Pontes, Pontes being the short-term solution that we want to deploy in September already this year. On that occasion, we covered the overall timeline for Pontes. So today it's a bit more ambitious, but 2 weeks ago it was the timeline for Pontes. And then it was also a more technical discussion on technical, functional, but also operational elements of Pontes. And finally, 2 weeks ago, we shared with you the details of testing, how to organize the connectivity, and also where you could find all the relevant information on our website. And today our purpose was to share more on Appia being the long-term part of our program for tokenized, for delivering tokenized central bank money. And we started with Thomas. It was a big honor to have Thomas with us today. And he showed us the main elements of the Appia Roadmap. Again, the Appia Roadmap was published just yesterday. And Thomas explained why the availability of a tokenized form of central bank money being the safest settlement asset there is, why that is essential for an efficient and a tokenized wholesale financial ecosystem that can scale. One of the key messages was also that this work will not be done by us, Eurosystem only. There is the intention to coordinate, of course, but we want to make sure that there's a good public-private partnership on this. We cannot design this ecosystem on our own. We need to work together to establish the best possible ecosystem. Then we moved to Holger, and Holger explained for how a tokenized ecosystem could deliver efficiency in our markets and also innovation. He shared some of the conceptual framework, which is quite straightforward, actually. We have, on one hand, a layer covering the assets and the services, and then we have a second layer covering the network for the technical processing of the transactions. And the network is also the place where the mechanisms are established to protect or guarantee the integrity of the ledger. He also explained that our objective when we engage in Appia are four. We have four different objectives. Again, I will not repeat those objectives today, but if you forgot in between, you can always go to our website, where you will find all the material used today, as well as the recording of the event. Then we moved on to Paul and Gergely, and then Paul and Gergely gave us more insight on how we intend to approach the work program for Appia, and also how we intend to involve market players in this journey. We started with Paul, and Paul walked us through our vision for the integrated ecosystem with ideally different types of assets available, of course, central bank money, but also possibly other private settlement assets and of course, tokenized securities. He explained the features and the scenario that we want to explore. This covers, amongst others, the network landscape, what would be a good landscape in terms of DLT networks for Europe. He also covered the necessary developments of standards and, very important, the elements to be checked to ensure that there is sufficient control over the assets and the service when they are deployed on the DLT network. And last but not least, Paul explained that we intend to organize the work around 6 building blocks. They will be the drivers for the work. And also, equally important, he informed us that there will be a consultation that we are about to issue now. And on my side, I can also encourage you to contribute to this consultation. That will be of great help to shape the program. And then we had Gergely, and Gergely took the difficult challenge of steering the work stream on standardization in the program at the ECB. And he has already started preaching the usefulness of standards today at different levels, that is data, semantics, tokens, interoperability, governance, and I believe the last one was legal. And of course, this is an essential ingredient to secure the interoperability and the good functioning of the ecosystem. So let me now, maybe before closing, remind you of the timeline. I don't know, Eileen, if we show the slide or not on the timeline. I don't see it. Okay, good. So again, if you take it from left to right, we published yesterday the Appia Roadmap. That was a good delivery, I think, from the team, and I hope you will look at it with a big interest. The next milestone is on Pontes, and we are actually well on track to deliver the initial version of Pontes, so the initial launch in September this year. Again, 2 weeks ago, we gave you lots of details on how we intend to achieve that. Then we will deliver a first batch of enhancements by mid of next year, so mid-2027. We have also planned to have a second release after go live already in the first half of 2028. Of course, this is very ambitious, but if you ask me, we will probably be there with towards the mid of 2028. If you look at the roadmap or the timeline here, we see first half, but that means probably towards the end of Q2 2028. It's a bit early to say, but that's a bit the expectation on my side. And then thanks to the energy that we put in the Appia Roadmap, and also thanks to the good interaction with market stakeholders, we want to deliver a blueprint in the second half of 2028. Again, the various speakers today explained how we want to achieve that. Then there was a question. I want to come back 1 second on this, and Thomas explained, but I'd like to repeat. There will be a close interaction between Pontes and Appia. We see it really as one program. We are convinced on one hand that the experience that we gain with Pontes will feed into Appia, but we are also convinced that the flow will also go the other direction, meaning that Appia will also inform Pontes on the deliverables to be prioritized in terms of production launch. And I will, my last words will go to the setup today. We had a good steady 550 participants, and I do not count those that followed the event from the live stream. We had Thomas, Holger, Paul, and Gergely doing their best to answer most of the questions raised. And I must say, from my perspective, I found those questions very good. And of course, it's always frustrating when your specific questions could not be answered directly. But don't worry, this is only the start of it. There will be many more occasions to interact. And I will finish maybe hoping that you found this focus session useful. Maybe you see behind me that it's sunny here in Frankfurt, and I hope that it's the same on your side. And so it's time for me now to wish you a good rest of the day. Thank you.
Thank you, Dimitri, and thanks to everybody for their involvement in today's session. I think it was super engaging and lively as always. So thanks for all the questions, and we hope that you enjoyed it. And if you missed anything and want to rewatch, remember it will all be published on the website after today. And also give us your feedback. Just scan the QR code. It's really a 2-minute job, because we would love to learn and improve for next time. So thanks to everybody and have a lovely afternoon. Thank you. Bye-bye.